right. Well, I hope everyone got their coffee. I know this is a tough time for everyone, and you're like that session after lunch, second session, so it's a tough one. So hopefully you're all caffeinated. So as David mentioned, my name is Kristi Faltorusso. I'm our VP of Customer Success. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you just yet, please tonight find me, grab me, introduce yourself. I'd love to connect with each of you and just hear your story. I'd rather not talk about myself, but rather ask all of my customer success managers to just stand up for a moment. I know you guys are all out there, I hope. They are. I just want to give them a round of applause quickly. If you have not taken the time to connect with your CSMs, if you have not really spend any time or don't know who they are, I actually connected with a few customers today that are newer, that haven't. Please take the time to meet them. They are your trusted advisors. They're the ones here to make sure that you are driving value from BetterCloud. So please, if you don't know who they are, find me. I'll find them for you. But please just make sure that you're leveraging them the right way, because they really can make the difference in the technology and how you're driving your business forward. So with that said, I'm going to take a moment and quickly introduce the panel here beside me. I have the privilege of sitting next to this team. I think they're all fantastic. I think you'll all get a lot of insight from them. So first up, I have Sara. She is a security analyst over at Thoughworks. JR, head of IT at Squarespace. Sorry about that. And Brian, who is our CISO at Zocdoc. All right, so to kick this off, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about your organization, the role that you play within it, and so Sara, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So Thoughtworks is a software consulting company. It's about 5,500 people. It's a global company, I think about 15 or 16 countries at this point. So basically we build custom software for our clients. I'm on the InfoSec team. We do a lot of kind of internal security operations and consulting. And specifically, I focus a lot on application security, as well as managing the cloud security with BetterCloud and doing helping out a lot with the internal security consulting for our tech ops teams.
So I'm JR from Squarespace, as we know. Squarespace is a company that empowers people with creative ideas with their online presence, their website. So we accommodate folks like musicians, actors, restaurant owners, folks like you and I, IT professionals, to build their own website without actually getting into design and coding. So gone are the days of being that guru and being up at like 3 in the morning making a change to a website. At Squarespace, I'm responsible for end user computing. We're split up into IT engineering as well as help desk operations. We deal with role-based access and mobile device management, and that's pretty much it.
Very good. Brian?
I'm Brian Lozada. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Zocdoc. Well, Sara was on earlier, so you guys know about Zocdoc, but I'll just give a little bit more detail. So Zocdoc, we try to take the friction out of the healthcare experience. One of the first things we like to do is pair patients with providers. So we actually get about 7 million patients a month that use our service to actually book with to find and actually get a doctor. At Zocdoc, we actually bring the time frame. The average time for a patient to see a doctor in the US, from the moment they pick up the phone to the moment they get into the office, is 24 days. And if you think about that, this is 2018. How does it take 24 days to get in? A Zocdoc patient, it takes 24 hours. So we're actually able to just shrink that time frame down and get patients into the doctor's office quicker. With 7 million patients using our platform, there's a lot of risk associated with that. So we have 150 developers all in New York. So I'm 90% of the time, application security is what I'm focused on, but also our internal users from an IT perspective.
Very good. So I know obviously security is top of mind for everybody. I think every conversation I've had, security's come up over the past couple days. How has automation played a part in your approach to security at each of your organizations? So I don't know, Brian, you want to kick us off on that one?
Yeah, so automation, I think everything should be automated. I want to take the human element out of most things. I think that's where a lot of mistakes happen. It's going to continue to happen if we don't push that envelope when it comes to automation. At Zocdoc specifically, I've taken the approach at security that we will not partner with folks that don't enable us to automate our response. So we're a cloud company. We're 100% on top of AWS. So we give our developers the opportunity to do what they want, right? We want them to feel like Picasso, and AWS is their canvas. They can do what they want. But what we've done with our platform at AWS is, if a developer does something that's against security policy, like spinning up an S3 bucket or putting something out there that's unencrypted, before, it would take us a few days to actually find that and actually say, we have to go spin that down. There could be sensitive data. We've started automating everything that happens when a developer launches something. We get logs. Those logs call a Lambda function. That Lambda function then does the remediation. So for this particular thing, we've automated that aspect. So when a developer spins it up, and they don't enable encryption, within 30 seconds, it actually encrypts that bucket, and we both get an email. One goes to the developer, one goes to us, right? We do it as a learning experience, but I'm automating all of those things that it used to take days before. Without automation, I think security is going to get stunted, even though it's in everybody's top of mind. Everybody needs security, but think about it. The last 25 years, we've been doing the same thing and expecting the same, different results. It's not going to happen. We need automation to push things forward, especially on remediation.
Again. Jerry, you want to go?
Well, it allows our team to be more agile, right? I mean, like, who likes to do manual processes? With the automation that we have, at least within our group, we're using BetterCloud. Basically, we're in a position to perform more meaningful stuff, right? No one wants to be doing an offboarding on 6 o'clock on a Friday and going through 16 different tasks. With some of its deep provisioning tools that BetterCloud has today, allows us to just move a user to a termination OU and let the work be done for them. The communications are then sent through email, and all relevant parties within its circle is getting an acknowledgement that the tool has functioned and successfully succeeded.
I think for me, the number one word that comes to mind is scalability. I think for the internal teams, it's not necessarily like the company's growing, so you're going to get more people and more money. So you have to do more with the same, or maybe more with less. When you can automate those tasks, it really just means that you have the ability as individuals and as a team to get more in depth in the interesting stuff and the more kind of sophisticated aspects of security. I think automation is completely inextricable from that.
Very good. So automated notifications is like a big part of that, right? So how are you guys managing the alert fatigue kind of issue that comes with it, right? Like if everything is being automated and you've got all these notifications, how are you managing that?
I think about alert fatigue in like kind of two different categories. One is for the security team itself. So, whether it's like alerts from Sumo Logic or, even from BetterCloud. And the other side is alerts for the end user. And I think the solution to both of those different problems is the same, in that you really just have to set something up in the best way that you can, observe, and then just continually hone it, because what you really need to do is bring what matters to the surface. Otherwise, the critical vulnerabilities or issues are just going to get lost in this wave of notifications, and it's going to stop mattering to people. They'll get completely desensitized to it. And so I think that it's in that critical analysis and continual analysis of looking at the results of those automated notifications.
Good. Jared?
Well, for us, I think we found it was easier to just decentralize alerts and assign them to a particular business function that's responsible for a particular tool or an outcome. If we're going to look at a dashboard and say, okay, everyone, one person has to respond to all these alerts, you're never really going to be that effective. So we're using PagerDuty. In the event that something were to be critical, it's going to go to a particular person, whether they're tasked for it, after hours or during the day. But we also use a log aggregation tools, so we can actually query data from different systems onto a single pane of glass, right? It just allows us to be a little bit more efficient in terms of what we're trying to look for. Usually, one alert is not going to trigger a red alarm that's going to be okay, we have to, send a send a fireman to an incident. But we do like to see, what's going on in our field. So in the previous life, we've used tools like Sumo Logic or Logarithm to query Active Directory and Okta when we offboard a user, right? Everyone, everyone offboards users, right? But what we like to happen is like we would like execute an offboarding through like Okta, which would then disable Active Directory, and that's great, right? But until it doesn't work. And we were alerted from an inside auditor that we had 4 different users that were currently enabled in the platform. Like, I don't get it. I looked at the logs, looked at the tickets. I'm like, this has been disabled. I'm like, why are they popping up? I'm like, we have 4 stage 5 clingers that are roaming around, and I have internal audit telling me that this is not okay. So we've used these tools to query both Okta and Active Directory, and had a diff command, and like with a predefined metric of like, let's just say 30 minutes. If we disable let's just say in Okta, and if it's not disabled in Active Directory, we're going to get an alert. We're going to get a PagerDuty alarm. It's going to auto-update a registry as well as open up a JIRA ticket. So the moral of the story is like, we're using automation to correct our automation. Like, do we use manual controls to do this, or we just keep using the automation? So it's interesting.
Automation to fix automation. I love that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the key, right? It's the key for it. So we use decentralized as well. So what we believe in is each one of our engineering teams or our business owners, they actually own the alert. So they actually own the response as well. So if it's a tool that they brought in, that they're the business owner, they're monitoring it, and something happens, they actually have to set up that incident response and what they're doing when it comes to alerting. Do we want to centralize, at least from a security perspective? Absolutely. But there's a lot of noise that comes with that, right? Because something that could be critical to us might not be critical to them, so they're not thinking of actually including that as part of sending it to our SIM, to Alien Vault or something like that. So security has to get involved with their instrumentation of it, but we don't get involved as far as how they're managing or monitoring that alerting function. The other thing that we do is we leverage our vendors. Like, our vendors know how their alerts are going to be more impactful and actionable for us. So I like to partner with my vendors and say, guys, you guys are sending me a lot of stuff. What are the things that I really need to action on? I have a small team, so how do I resource them accordingly? Because security folks are expensive, and I'm not going to waste a lot of their time on something that's not going to be actionable, right? So it's a combination of things, but I really do leverage my partners a lot to help me out with it.
Very good. So that said, as a partner, right, how are you guys leveraging BetterCloud to really manage some of that automation?
Something that we've really focused on is DLP, definitely, primarily in Google Drive. So having conversations with legal and finance and HR, and basically just asking, like, what keeps you up at night? What is your worst nightmare? And then trying to translate those into policies. And I think someone mentioned this before, like, just in a tool to like demonstrate to people what's going on, saying these are our public docs that have potentially confidential information, and then being able to provide the assurance that we're actually handling some of that with a degree of confidence. That's definitely been big for us, just having conversations with key partners.
Very good. Kara?
Well, I have to agree with you. Data loss prevention tools is something that we use to combat a bunch of things. At Squarespace, we want to get an idea who's sharing their Google Drive out to their internal Gmail account, right? So we're not going to go through tons of logs and doing this as a manual process. We'd be there all day. So we allow these tools to run in the background and then alert the necessary parties, and then we bring it to management like, here are your gaps. What do you want to do? We will also use it to hedge a bit of the PII issues that we have going on. We don't want to be sharing social security information or potential credit card information, using email, right? So we're obviously not going to, read people's emails, but we're going to use these tools just to hunt for those predefined definitions that will come to the surface. Secondly, I think, once again, offboarding, it's a big pain, right? So everybody wants to have a single-click resolution. So BetterCloud was a tool that allowed us to shrink the amount of steps it takes to deprovision a user. I can't say it's single-click now, but with the amount of apps that we're now releasing on the grid, the more that it releases, the greater of a value that we gain back in return. So those two items are the biggest things that we use it for right now.
Very good.
I have to echo that. I think So there's a few things. Onboarding and offboarding is actually a big thing for us. We're about 534 employees, we're growing. We also have a lot of employees that actually transfer between departments. They're going from sales to technology, and sometimes access rights get inherited, and we forget about that, right? So we're using BetterCloud for a lot more visibility on that aspect of it. But the offboarding is key for us because we do use a lot of SaaS products, right? And sometimes we want it to be one click as well. But the more and more things that I think you guys add, we'll get there. But things get forgotten. And if we didn't have BetterCloud, there would be terminated employees that have access to, solutions that, could have sensitive data in there. So it's given me a lot more visibility and ability to terminate those things. The other thing is DLP. I think everybody's concerned with DLP. So we do have, we have it enabled to monitor that. But also just give us a little bit more on behavior. Right, so we monitor and say, should this person be doing it? And if so, I need to know it so that if it becomes an anomaly, we get action upon it. I would love to see a lot more behavioral analysis around it, so I could then put a profile against each user, and then if something deviates off of that user, we get that action on it as well. I'm hoping you guys are going to get there, but I think behavior is something that we could, improve on.
I mean, full disclosure, I'm a four-time customer of BetterCloud. I had maybe my hand in 3 of those occasions, right? But the truth is like it works, right? Google doesn't do it for you. If they did, we wouldn't be here today, They're not competing products, but they, BetterCloud really does fill a gap. It fills a need. When we all moved from Exchange, eons ago, we didn't have those utilities and tools to measure where we are, to assign a distribution list. Something as simple as that. BetterCloud came in. It's like, you guys haven't done it before. No one's done it before. It's like, let's come in. So I'm really, really thrilled to see what you guys have to talk about in terms of your future roadmap.
That's tomorrow, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So I know that we obviously, it's not just your teams that are managing security, right? Like how do you really start to evangelize security and the importance of it across your organizations? Sara, I know for you, your organization, you have a lot of remote employees. I know, JR, you've got a lot of different generations of people thinking about it very differently, but I'd love to hear each of your perspectives on how you're evangelizing this, how you're getting people on board with it and really bought into the importance around security.
Mm-hmm. I think for us it's been a lot about just communication and then process to actually back up what you have communicated. So sort of like talking the talk and then walking the walk. We've had a couple of pretty successful global rollouts of security communications, such as just, hey, here's the dangers of having public files, or here's what happens when you connect a third-party application to your Thoughtworks account. And then, actually backing that up with, and here's some automation that we're going to put in place to lower our risk here. Here's what you can expect to see. And then, because we are such a global company, making sure that it's not just some thing in everyone's inbox from some person who works in New York, having that actually be communicated on a regional level, maybe by someone that people actually know and will open an email from, and also just having those communications look nice and be something that people actually it draws them in, people want to look at it, it gives them the numbers that they can understand. I think that people want to do the right thing, but they don't always necessarily know that they might not be doing the right thing, and so sort of appealing to that sentiment in people. And then the follow-up part of that is having the processes in place so that when people do have questions or requests or incidents that that come up, that there are actually different channels that they can be kind of placed into, and the workflow is clear, at least to the security team. It might be invisible to them, and that's something that we're working on. I wouldn't say that we're 100% there, but I think that really inspires a lot of confidence.
Who thinks the end user is not the biggest security risk in the company, right? I would love to bubble wrap an end user and protect themselves, but in all honesty, it doesn't look great. So when it comes to security, I like to go to the basics. Measure what your landscape looks like. What are the gaps? What are your vulnerabilities? Can you even see that? Do you have monitoring? Right? So we need those tools in place. End user prevention and detection tools, mucho important, right? In the event that like an executive or anyone gets like crypto locker or ransomware, how are you going to defeat that? Patching on all endpoints, often overlooked. These vulnerabilities come in through our firewalls and they get installed on something that the end user installs themselves. They don't know it. Other things is pretty fundamental, is like make security part of a company culture, right? It has to start from hello. It has to start from the onboarding process. Like we need to say as an IT department, no, you can't come into the business with your own set of tools, which most people do. They come in with their tools because they know that works. So we have to be a part of the conversation and saying, okay, do you need this tool? Do we have duplicit tools on the network already that you can already use? A proper software vetting process is really important. That has to come from the top down. And that consists of going through legal, right? Like after that you need it, go through legal, no, sorry, not legal, security first, and then legal, and then finance, and then like how much is it gonna cost? Is it even worth having a tool like that? But having a security and IT team, like to work in concert is really, really important. Like, segregation of duties, like security would, come up with the GRC component of a policy or something. We're the executioners, we deploy it, but we're also the ones that remediate. And having a team to, work together that way is really huge. Company newsletters, security being part of the onboarding process, and talking about shadow IT openly. So once you're doing that, you're developing with a security framework, and that's state of mind, it's gonna be like, oh wow, we can't have this, we can't have that. And at Squarespace, we provide least admin privileges as a model to all of our applications. There's only 2 super admins that are in Google right now. That's the CEO and the CTO. Okay, like no one else has it. I mean, when I came to this company, it was quite frustrating. It's like, oh wow, I don't have the power anymore, right? So if you take that approach and you apply it towards all your applications, you're really going to minimize the risk when it comes to end user security.
Just a follow-up question. So you talked about obviously enabling people when they come on board. Is your team part of new hire onboarding, and are you guys having conversations with new employees as they join to talk about security?
We do to a degree, so we don't stumble onto what the security team does. There's a special onboarding meeting for those people that talk about, what's okay, what's not okay. And then we talk about more like password management and best practices when it comes, and then onboarding them onto the systems so they can actually get to work right away. But the main focus is on the security team because they apply the policy.
Yep. All right, very good. Ryan, what's your thoughts?
That's a great question, is how do you evangelize security into an organization? So when I first got to Zocdoc, I'm the first CISO there. The first thing I wanted to do was give a face to security. I didn't want the user to be like, we're security, what do you want to do? So we established the office of the CISO and made it a brand. We actually gave it a logo. And there's a distro that goes out and communicates to all users. Like this month, we have a logo. We actually have a Zocdoc security logo that goes out on the bottom of all emails that come from the office of the CISO. So it just gives that feel that there's something you could touch, that you could feel, right? That's one. The other thing I did was they were doing online training for cybersecurity. We're a small enough company that we could do this. I changed it to a classroom experience. Why I wanted a classroom experience is because I wanted to have that personal connection with the user, to let them know that each thing that they do is impactful to their job, but it also has a security tie-in to it. That also gave me the ability to, or gave them the ability to say, that's the person I need to reach out to, or those are the team members I need to reach out to, so that I think something's going on. We also call the office of the CISO the office of collaboration, because now we get it to the point that everybody reaches out to us and say, we're thinking of doing X, we're thinking of doing Y, and we're like, you guys should be talking to each other because you're doing the same thing. Right? So it gave us that ability to actually bring security into the culture and make it part of the framework. This is, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're actually having a few things going on. We're actually hosting like a DevOps, and we're inviting the whole company. OWASP is coming, and it's just something that's sponsored by the Office of the CISO. There's posters all over, and it just keeps it very top of mind for everybody.
That's great. So, I mean, I'm going to start with you on this one, Brian. So you talked about, obviously, what did you say? Your organization is probably a little shy of 600 employees right now and looking to scale and grow. What's the plan to, as your organization scales, to really continue to evangelize security and really to keep control over that?
There's a few things. It's business partnerships. I value partnerships. You need to be involved in the conversation. If you think about it, 5 years ago, security was always an afterthought. It was something like, we're about to launch this product. Did you run it by security? Nowadays, we're involved in the conversation. We're not talking about how the product should be developed, but we're talking about what risks are associated with going with that product route, and how do we minimize that risk, and how do we focus on innovation that's going to help with that product without introducing risk to it. So it's getting ahead of it and staying ahead of it, staying visible. Getting support from up top is very important as well. But if you don't have those partnerships across the business, it's not just about products, HR, legal, finance, if you don't have those business partnerships and you're not aware of what they're doing, you're going to be behind, right? So you got to be like the nosy neighbor, that you're always in everybody's business, right? You always want to be there so that when something does go wrong, you know how to react to it, but you could be prepared for it. As a CISO, my job is to prepare for, respond to, recover from. And the only way I could actually do that is being involved in the conversation.
Great. JR, same question for you. So again, scaling, how are you going to future-proof security?
Well, I have a different aspect on this. As a working father, and I no longer have my head in the book, and I'm no longer keeping up on the latest security bulletin or the LinkedIn website. I'm no longer an engineer. I got to be realistic. I manage a team. The team is what does the work for me. Like they make me look good, right? So my theory is like, if you're not the smartest person in the room when it comes to its subject matter, surround yourself by the smartest people in the room. I mean, like a doctor, if you have cancer, you want to see the best doctor, right? You're not going to I'm going to do this myself. So, I would suggest folks to, be a part of the conversation. Obviously, define what the business needs are, right? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And, even reach out to folks like Sara at Thoughworks, right? And, work in unison of what you're trying to achieve with the money you can spend, right? I mean, security is very expensive. You mentioned it, right? And not everyone can deploy all these tools, scanning, monitoring. We need to actually trend our security posture. We need to effectively figure out if we're making an impact by using these tools, right? So if you don't have a strategy going into this, you're going to fail. This is not this is not like a whack-a-mole, I'm saying? You need to, have all the things we talked about today happening at the same time. The conversations, the basics, the patching, the scanning, the relationships between the end user and, the security team. We're often, the bad guys. It's like, we're not gonna approach them because they're just gonna say no. Well, good, we should say no, right? You bring in a tool, it's not sanctioned, we're removing it. End of story. But, see the folks that can help you.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I think collaboration is so important, and the more connections that we, as the InfoSec team, have made to, whether it's just the security communities in our professional services part of the organization, or our internal teams as well. It makes our lives easier because it pushes security to the left, as we would say. It brings it in earlier and earlier in the conversation, which then enables our ultimate goal of basically having teams be self-sufficiently secure, because we cannot constantly be on calls with all of our teams all over the world. I would never sleep. It would be terrible. And we don't necessarily want, security to be separate from development or from delivery. We want it to be inherent to those things. And so enabling teams to do that, which, does take sort of a lot of that heavy lifting up front. I was in India for a month working with our teams there to do threat modeling, or to just kind of help them develop their security mindset. It wasn't even necessarily about, finding the issues and giving them a plan to fix them. It was, okay, how are you going to approach development as you continually do it? So yeah, I think it's so much about the collaboration, as Brian said, and then that just kind of enabling everything else, because we can't be everywhere, can't be all the things.
Very good. All right, so that wraps the questions that I have for you guys. So I want to take a moment and open questions up to the audience and see if you guys have anything for our panelists. Oh, lots of hands.
Hi there. Not exactly a question about automation, but historically, everybody was, of course, securing the endpoints, securing and encrypting those corporate machines. I just wondered what you guys were doing with identity security, and if you're doing anything, using any of Google's identity-aware proxy or Microsoft's conditional access.
So we're right now going through a process of onboarding a single sign-on for the business. You know, our auth layer is behind our LDAP or Google right now. It works, you know, we did a really good job, but it's not a single pane of glass. We're still finding gaps in the offboarding process, especially for house cleaning reasons. And we don't want people to really care about passwords so much, you know what I'm saying? Because when you do, you're just gonna pick the same password plus 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? You're making it insecure by making the passwords more complicated. So by leveraging SAML and having all apps like going into a dashboard, you know, it's more conducive, and it really will alleviate the onboarding pains as well as outboarding pains, because you join, you know, you join day one and you're on an engineering team, you know, you need access to all these different apps, right? So how great would it be to just like log in with one password, one passport, right? And having all your apps at your disposal. So we are vetting this product right now, and it's going to be something we'll be deploying out next year.
At Thoughworks, we actually have an identity team, so it's not really the responsibility of the InfoSec team, although of course we consult with them a lot, but recently we've moving away from Active Directory and entirely managing identity and access management through Okta. And like, for instance, in the Google admin space, nobody on the InfoSec team is a Google admin. It's only people from the identity team. And I actually think that that can be a really good thing. It's a huge part of the security of an organization, and having a team who's like just a subject matter expert there, completely own that process, I think has worked really well for us.
So we're looking at Okta as well to help manage identities. Something you mentioned earlier, Jero, was like passwords. I think this is 2018. Again, we're still using passwords. Drives me absolutely nuts. So we're actually looking at another company called Hyper that is going to do biometric authentication using the user's phone, right? And not just your thumbprint. They actually do thumb, palm, voice, retina, and face. And we're going to give the users the opportunity to actually log in with those and do two-factor. We could do distress symbols too. If you log in with your left eyeball, somebody's got a gun to your head, right eyeball, you can get in, right? We're starting to think about how can we do that for all users, because getting rid of the password, I think, is going to reduce our threat, our threat surface dramatically. Because when you look at all the attacks that are going out there, they're going after the user, so they can get that password, they get into your environment and take data, right? No longer is it just trying to go through the website. Like, these threat actors are smart. They're doing recon. They're finding out who works at BetterCloud and doing, you know, a whisper campaign to go after them. So if we take away the ability for them to actually steal a password, it helps that to reduce that risk. I think that's something like in security we need to start thinking about, is how do you push that forward? How do you evangelize getting rid of the password in an organization, right? Auditors are not too happy about it. I've spoken to a few of them. But it's something that we need to, as a security practitioner, we need to push the industry forward.
Well, it takes out the social brute force part of it, right? So like, you know, people still leave their passwords on their monitors. You know, it's ridiculous. And, you know, also default passwords. You know, I think we're all guilty of it. You know, we put a default password that everyone knows when they first log into a machine, but then they change it. But what if you get a hold of that machine that already has, you know, access to your network? You know, not saying it's going to happen, you know, if it's in your billing, but it does happen. So, you know, you're removing that component, and then soon, like you said, like it'll be more automated.
Another question?
A couple things. A couple are just a commentary on previous things and previous sessions. I've noticed that shadow IT has been a topic that's been brought up a few times. The tool that I found to help with that is called Blissfully. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but in a couple of ways it helps out. It finds out what services are being purchased from different departments that you don't know about. Doesn't do every single service out there, but it's really good for insights. And then just a follow-up to the previous question. So as far as accessing things and getting access to those services or SaaS products, you have SSO and all those things, but what if they're coming from a different location you're not aware of? So Google has come up with Beyond Corp, a security model based on top of Zero Trust. So I would like to have some commentary on that. And in addition, the other question would be on how you handle contractors and provisioning devices for them, or BYOD, especially for Brian, since you work in a highly regulated industry.
So I'll take the contractor question first. So we do have a lot of contractors, and we have an overseas office as well. So there's a few things. I care about data and people, hardware, and like you guys were mentioning endpoint earlier too. Like everybody has endpoint protection. Yeah, it doesn't stop anything. So I care more about data lifecycle. If my contractor needs access to this certain data, I want to be able to give that person a platform that I could visualize what they're doing, and that in the event that that data is being moved, I could react on it, right? So I do a lot of data tracing for for my contractors. And the other thing is focusing on people. Why I focus on people is they're going to need to access the data. They need to modify it, look at it, right? So let's ensure that they have the right access controls around that, and that we have the ability to, again, I'm not about stopping things. You think that's crazy, that CISO saying not about stopping things. I'm about visualizing it. I need to know that it's going on so that I can put a program around allowing it to do for business functions or to react in the event of an incident. So for contractors, we used to actually like give them our hardware and send them and say you could only operate on this. I just didn't think it was expensive, one, and two, I just didn't think that's going to be helpful for the contractors. But giving them that ability to use that platform that we could visualize what they're doing gives me the confidence that I could, trust them. The other thing is, on contractors, what do you have in your contracts? How is legal involved in your third-party contract process? What kind of accountability you're putting on that contractor for any sort of security stuff?
I'll take the contractor part first as well. So, like Brian said, like you don't get access to a machine, unless we give it to you. You cannot bring your own stuff. There's no BYOD. At the end of the day, because we have such a security culture in our company, we start with the HR department. It's like, okay, we have a contractor coming in, comes in the form of a ticket. Okay, if the ticket says this contractor needs access to X, we manage it up. There's an approval chain. We know that. We don't bypass that. If we do, then we failed the system because some idiot is going to actually assign these admin rights to a system that you don't know about it. So if it's not in the JIRA ticket, it doesn't exist. So you have to trend your accountability starting from there. I think your first part of the question with shadow IT, once again, you got to go down to the fundamentals. Right? It's like people come in with their own tools because they work and it worked for them, and that's great. It's like if you have a legitimate purpose for this tool, it's okay to have that conversation. IT needs to become a part of that conversation and say, okay, what are you looking to do? Does your whole team need it, or is it just you? Is it a SaaS application? Is it a local application? We'll vet it through the proper channels. Security, legal, finance, and then we'll get back to you in the form of a ticket. But at the end of the day, if it's a legitimate service and you need it to do your job, or your team needs to do your job, awesome, great. If you can afford it, it'll come out of your bucket. So that's how we approach everything, really. We manage it up. And if it's okay, that's great. If the business wants to spend X amount of dollars on a service that we're already paying for, that's up to them, as long as we go in through our checks. Your last question, or at least your second question, I can't answer that. But I would love to circle back with you offline, and I'll be happy to sync with our engineers. I have 2 senior engineers here from Squarespace today, and be happy to have a chat.
So I guess I'll also talk about contractors first. I don't think that we treat them any differently. I think the way that we look at things is if you need access. I mean, if you have an account, you have an account. We're always going to approach things from a principle of least privilege. You'll have access only to what you need access to get your job done. And I don't think we really care or sometimes even know necessarily whether you're a full-time employee or a contractor. As for shadow IT, I like to think about shadow IT at Thoughworks in a bit of a different way. We're a company full of developers who are very smart and like to, their job basically is to solve problems with software, and they apply that in their free time to problems at Thoughtworks as well. And so, we have a lot of custom applications that are internally built that just kind of like solve tiny little problems, and we enable it. We have a whole team called Labs, and they have, they use Heroku, they have a platform and a process, and the InfoSec team is a part of that process. And I think it's really cool for a couple of reasons. One, it takes us out of the role of being the blocker, of being like the bad guy, being the people who say no, which is fun. It gives us a little bit of a better rep. And then I think the other really big benefit of that is that those developers and the BAs and the QAs and the PMs on those teams, they're going through a security review and they're understanding what this baseline expectation of a secure application is, and we get to work with them, hands-on and point out some flaws that we found and how to make them better and actually educate them on different issues, which I think is like really, really valuable.
On the shadow, I like that. On the shadow IT aspect of it, like BYOX, it's a problem. It's always going to be a problem. Engineers, especially developers, they're going to bring in their own stuff. Getting ahead of the conversation is important, but seeing why they're bringing it in, they're not doing it to be insecure. They're not doing it. They're doing it because they feel it's going to help them be more productive. So making security part of that conversation so they can come to you and say, I want to bring this in, you're really going to get ahead of it. Finding it after is tough, because when you find it and they're saying it's doing X, it's helping with this product, you cannot slow down that product roadmap. So how do you remediate against that? Do you go and start doing like third-party review, or what kind of contract, or did you just do a click-through agreement? Like doing those type of things, you got to prioritize and pick your battles, because you do not want security to be the office of no. If it becomes the office of no, you open up more risk, because they will continue to do BYOX and never tell you. And then when that incident happens, and you don't know that it's a tool that your developers are using, it's going to be on the security teams because they haven't been, so close to the user. So again, you got to prioritize and pick your battles. But BYOX, it's not going away.
Yeah, but I do want to add to that like it's not really, we're not saying no. We're just saying we have a process that you need to adhere to, right? Yep. It's like if you have validity in your point, if you really need this tool and it drives your team faster, like we can see that, right? As long as you go through the proper channels. And so if we do find that you're using a tool, and it's happened a few times this year where someone is making a presentation and, I got pinged from a C-level person. It's like, hey, are we using this tool? We're using this now? It's like, I don't know anything about it. It's the first time I'm seeing it. It's like, okay. It's like, listen, I don't have a problem with it. It's like, make sure that this person goes through the right channels. And that will echo. That's the culture thing. It's like, oh man, I brought this tool in. I put all my eggs in this basket. I'm doing this thing. It looks really, really cool. You got the CEO excited about it. And now I have to pause. I was like, well, that's your problem, because you didn't listen to us from day one. Right? So you need to always reinforce the law. No one gets a pass. Not even the CEO gets a pass. And if that's known, people are probably not going to bring their own stuff. It's like, oh, what's the point? It's going to get nixed, right? He's going to say no, or like, I have a lot of work to do to prove myself that I had to now deploy this tool in the business.
It's totally a culture thing.
Yeah.
You have to embed into the culture, finding it after, before. Is it going to get nixed? Is it isn't? But the other thing is, you're totally right. I want my developers out there looking at new tools. That's going to help innovation. Our point is to innovate on things, right? So there is a balance you have to strike. It's like, if they're going to go out there and source these tools and look at them and want to bring them in, include us. But I don't want them to have that fear of saying, I can't be out there and like looking at things, because it's going to stifle innovation, and that's just something I'm not going to support that.
So that's why scanning is so important, right?
True.
You see what's running on your network. You look for things. You just whitelist everything. I'm sorry, excuse me, blacklist everything.
Yeah. Any.
See, now you need automation to check that, right? You block everything out, and you just you look for the things that matter, right? And you have certain people like, only look for these things. And if something comes up on the radar, it's like, whoa, we're gonna have a conversation. So, not everyone has the money to afford these tools. So we can do the things that don't cost money, which is like starting from the conversation. And starting from the top down. It's like, it has to matter all the way up here. Because as soon as it circumvents a level or a layer, it's gone. It's gone. You're the weakest link.
I think that question of like, it has to matter here is such an important one, because sometimes if we find something that is already in production, we'll just say, okay, well, this needs to come offline. Sorry. Like, if you came to us even with a couple days notice and said, we need to bring this online, we're sorry, can you please prioritize this? We will do what we can within reason, but like, the question that we'll ask is, but who cares about this? Who's asking for this? Why are we doing this? Why are we spending money on this? We're spending resources on this. Who's gonna own and maintain this? And if they can't like answer those questions, then it's not worth the risk that it introduces, I think.
And if you are using the tool for that long, where dollars are really like amounting, it's like, wow, if we cancel this now, our campaign isn't going to work. That's a bad sign. You've been using it this long and no one's noticed. because the other things aren't in place. I'm like, who have you shown this to? Oh, like 5 other people, and no one's asked a question, like, where did this tool come from? Finance will say, like, oh, we're not paying for that, or, why are we paying for that? There are other ways, there are other indicators,
Very good. Do we have any more questions? Do we have time for one more?
One more.
One more. Very good.
So I'm all for vetting out applications or tools before they go into the environment, for sure, but particularly coming from an IT background and managing user expectations, how can we streamline the process from an IT perspective, from a user perspective, to get those tools vetted more quickly?
It starts with a ticket. If it's not in a ticket, it doesn't exist. Right? I mean, it's like a front door, any front door. You don't have the key, you're not getting in. It's like you're asking me, it's like, so how do I jump through the window? Well, you just circumvented the front door. That's just poor security. There's a reason why there's a door, right? And it has to start with a ticket. That you have to trend the history of this process, because then I can, right now we're synergizing our service desks right now, where the software process is seen by legal and finance, and I can see where it is in the workflow of like where it's stuck at, or if it's approved or not. And it's great because now I have a historical reference of how a tool got into the business to begin with. And then when we do a review of our OpEx spend to see if we need it, we can go back to the historical point and say, okay, why did we buy this tool again? Often folks come to the business, they have no idea what the history is. Well, we document everything. So we're a library, an exchange. So it has to come from there.
Yeah, I think step 1 is a ticket, but I think sometimes step 0 is like pinging me or emailing me, and then I'll create a ticket for you if I think it's something that's valuable. But something that we're trying to do, I spoke before about having the processes to back up the things that you're communicating. And something that we're trying to do is understand how much risk the request carries and then responding appropriately to that risk. So we have this app risk classification model where, like, depending on what it integrates with, or the permissions it requires, or like who needs to access it, the data that that it touches, all of that, the expectations for the security of that application increase, and the scope of the security review for it will increase as well, which means, in terms of streamlining, if it's not something that introduces a terrible amount of risk, then hopefully the turnaround on that is much faster. And if it's something that, integrates with a ton of different systems and touches all of our PII, then we should be taking our time with it. So we're working on responding appropriately to what is asked of us.
The process is efficient as the executor. If someone's not doing their job, you'll know where the plumbing's backing up. So you can't automate this. I mean, I get it that you want to we can onboard apps more efficiently, quickly. I'm like, if that was the case where I can just turn up an app like downloading on your phone, we'll be in a world of hurt. Because no one's asking the right questions. The app hasn't been around long enough. What is it communicating to? Just because it's got a really cool API, doesn't mean that it's not okay that it's passing sensitive data from one service to another. That it's querying your Slack channel, even though it's a bot, right? But let's just say your Slack channel is, harboring company sensitive information. Is it okay for that to get out there? I mean, how important is it to the business at the end of the day if you're okay with this company knowing this data? Who's reading it? Who's not reading it?
I think it comes down to risk, like understanding the risk of the application, what data it's touching, storing, or processing. If the app is doing that, that's when you begin that review, right? If it's something that is not as high risk, then you could deprioritize it. I think they all need to get reviewed, but it really is going to come down to that risk-based approach. Like, how risky is this app into the organization?
Right, leveling.
Yeah, totally.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for your insight on this topic. Obviously, there's a lot of interest, and so please follow up with them after the session or during any of our breaks to get more information around this. But wanted to thank you all for your contributions today. Thank you.
Thank you.